Okay, everybody, we're going to get going in a minute. I have a general announcement. Everybody? Hey! I got a general announcement first. We're going to get going in a minute. The hotel has contacted me, letting me know that, and I had said this at the beginning, in this room, in our lunchroom, we don't need to wear masks, but in any of the public areas of the hotel, the lobby, the elevators, the restaurant, you need to have your mask on. They need to do that for their compliance with the rules of their city and their county, and we don't want them to get in trouble, do we? So, we as libertarians are going to voluntarily cooperate with this business so that they can stay in business, if y'all don't mind. So if you could do that, thank you. I appreciate it.
Madam Chair,
and they don't care if you're vaccinated. By the way, they put that in the email. They are not asking for vaccination papers. They don't care if you're vaccinated. They want masks when you're in the public areas because that is still mandated by the state and the county and the city. Recall Newsom, yes. Yes, we need Jeff Hewitt.
Madam Chair, for my personal privilege,
yes, sir.
we see about getting the water refilled at the station center.
That is being worked on.
Thanks so much.
But thank you for that personal privilege. Before we start with the next item, we are going to watch a short video. This is a really good video. Judge Gray sent it to me. He asked that we watch it. It's very short. I think that everybody will enjoy it. And it'll get us ready for the next part, which is more bylaws. Yay. So, do we have the screen? Do we have the projectors going?
No. Anthony.
Anthony.
The projectors and the microphone that was being used for speakers.
Yes. We need some stuff here. Sorry, guys. And by the way, while Anthony and TJ are scurrying over and doing this, I would like us all to give them a round of applause. They have had to deal with all of this. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege. We had a storage unit with all of our AV, with much of our AV equipment in it. It was broken into. And I didn't find that out until I went to get the equipment for this convention. So we had to scurry to rent things, buy things, and put things together to be able to do this for audio visual. So theft sucks. You know, we're libertarians. Don't take our stuff, don't hurt us. Somebody took our stuff. All right, so, Yeah, I just talked to Jill by it. Okay, so here's the, can you make that big screen? And let's check the sound with your microphone to make sure that...
It's down there. The HDMI cuts out with my speakers on my laptop, so we're doing it off the projectors.
Oh, that's why the microphone's down there. Okay, without further ado, can you make it full screen?
If you look at American politics and think everything is fine, this video is not for you. To the rest of us, things seem pretty broken. I mean, our forefathers created a beautiful system and we live in a magical country. How the hell did things get so bad? These days, just 2% of Americans trust that our elections work how they're supposed to. Congress has an approval rating of 20%. Our leaders are locked in partisan warfare and they aren't fixing anything. And we're angry. We're angry at the system, at each other. Our country is getting poorer, sicker, more divided, and our families are paying the price. We don't even talk to each other anymore. America's political system has been hijacked to ensure those with power keep it. And for the rest of us, well, it's not so good. This Venn diagram shows the relationship between an elected official doing what the people want and their likelihood of getting re-elected. Ideally, they serve the people and have a high likelihood of re-election. But a recent Harvard Business School report by Professor Michael Porter and Catherine Gale showed that the relationship looks more like this. They found virtually no correlation between serving the will of the people and getting re-elected. In other words, if our elected leaders do their jobs, they're more likely to lose their jobs. How is that possible? The report blames it on two privately held gain-seeking organizations, America's two major political parties. In 2019, both major parties publicly threatened to blacklist candidates and contractors who veered from the party lines. They control the money, the debates, the primaries. They even draw their own voting districts. A full 61% of Americans want another option. But any third party or independent who runs is seen as a spoiler. So year after year, we choose between the lesser of two evils, Democrats, Republicans, Democrats. In any other environment, a new competitor would swoop in to better serve their constituency. You hate your cable company? Here comes streaming. But the two parties have rigged the system to block competition. But it gets worse. In 86% of House races, we now know which party will win the general election before it even starts. That means all of the competition is in the primaries, where as few as 14% of voters participate. And primary voters tend to be more partisan than those who vote in the general election. So the most partisan candidates to win the primary are virtually guaranteed to win the general, so you can guess what happens next. Over time, parties move further and further apart. This graphic shows members of Congress who worked with the other party to pass a law in 1953. The gray lines represent their collaboration. The more lines you see, the more times they crossed party lines to pass a law. This is how it looked in 67. In 81. Look what happened in 1995, and by 2011 it represents where we are today. Hardliners are rewarded, collaboration is vilified. Congress is so gridlocked they can't even pass the most basic laws to improve the lives of everyday Americans. For the first time since the Great Depression, life expectancy in the U.S. is actually going down while it goes up in the rest of the world. We were once ranked top in the world for education. We've fallen to 27th. We can't afford life-saving prescriptions, and medical bills are forcing families into bankruptcy. Almost half of American families can't even afford basic necessities like rent and food. What I want to know is, how do we fix it?
Thank you, Judge Gray. I thought that was really disturbing. Huh? Really disturbing.
That's only part of the video. They go on and talk about ranked choice voting. Yeah.
Well, we're not there, so we're here. Okay, so I'm calling the meeting back to order at 1:47. Sorry, we're a little late. And we will continue with bylaw amendments from the bylaw committee.
Maybe we have credentials. You want to give an update on the credentials?
Oh.
Yeah. 138.
Okay. And that's a good point. Very well taken. That we need to update credentials. We now have 138 credentialed delegates, which I'm an engineer, so I can't do math without a calculator. It's a thing. Oops. Okay, so we've got quorum of 70, which is also a simple majority, which doesn't matter anymore. And we don't care about 2/3, but we will need 14 people for a standing second.
You may need 2/3, some things like closing debate.
That's a precedent voting.
But, no, I mean, motion to close debate or the limited time. Those would still require 2/3 vote.
They require 2/3, but not of all registered delegates.
Right, well, right, yeah.
It's president voting.
Yeah.
Okay, so, again, there we go.
All right, so we left off on recommendation number 4. This one affects bylaw number 7, has to do with due sharing. So the reasoning is by doing away with the first year bounty for membership dues, this would better encourage the state and county parties to work together to increase membership. This amendment would result in equal due sharing to occur for all memberships, regardless of whether the county or state party got the initial memberships. And the committee voted a yes recommendation on this, 3-0.
Okay, and the microphone's going to be there any second now to open discussion. Do we have our timekeeper? Can somebody keep time for me? So it's 15 minutes total for each proposal, 2 minutes speaking time. And we are opening discussion. Is there discussion? I see discussion. Yes, sir.
A little bit of history. A little bit of history here. So this provision where we said that 100% of the dues would go for the first year membership to whoever garnered the member, basically, was in response to the problem of it costs so much to get a new member. So what this did is it rewarded whichever organization brought in the member, because in all likelihood, you spent a lot more to get that member than their first year's dues revenue. So I don't think that this actually helps our organization. I think it makes it more difficult for us to pay for the cost of new members. And that's why I think that we should not adopt this. I would suggest instead, for a future bylaw consideration, that we have a system where county parties can get dues, similar to what National is about to do with California, where somebody can join National, can join California. Someday have a system where someone can join California, separately join a county party as well. So that way, the dues, there still can be dues to counties even through the state. But this existing system that we have today makes it more possible for the state party to engage in membership recruitment and for county parties to engage in membership recruitment, making it 50% no matter what the circumstances, new or renewed, is going to result in fewer people being recruited.
Thank you. Discussion.
Name is TJ Ferreira. I want to speak for this amendment. I agree with a lot of what Aaron said. I just don't think it's relevant anymore. We're at a point now where we actually have scale. It's a little bit of scale, but we have scale in our party. And the state party is now capable of doing that type of fundraising and outreach and getting that type of stuff. And who benefits from this are the small county parties, because they'll now be getting that 50% that they're not getting right now when the state goes out and raises those funds. Not only that, but for some of those states, or for some of the county parties that need more money, we have a strong affiliate support committee now. In fact, at 4 o'clock today, there's a meeting you guys should go to if you're in a county. And so I think that this is a good bylaw change that actually reflects where we're at right now as a state. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Speaking for.
And you are?
Brent Olson, Kings County. So yeah, I'm in favor of this bylaws change as well. In part, what we'll see is counties will be getting a larger amount of the funds. So this will be beneficial to the counties, because right now the state party is the one where most people are joining through. People are joining through the website. And some counties don't have like a website or something like that they can easily allow people to join through. And so they'll refer people, even though they're the ones that are getting those new memberships, they're referring people to join through the state party's website. And I know there are workarounds for that, but the reality is this will be beneficial for the counties, because counties will be getting more of those funds from those initial memberships.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask again, there's not many people online, but left, right? As far as... He's first, though.
Michael Tischler, Sonoma County. I just wanted to call the question.
Okay, the question's been called. By the way, this is just a note. Points of information are not privileged. Points of order are, but points of information aren't. So any point of information still has to go through the line in order. I didn't make that clarification earlier, so I will let you make your point of information, but from now on, that's the way that works.
I'm wondering if we have any statistics that back up the position that was just made, that the counties are actually benefiting because the state is actually doing the bulk of the requirements. I could see where that could happen if most people are now doing things through the website, which is the way to go. But I would really like to see some data if we have it.
Okay, so that is a point of information, and it's a point that I don't necessarily have the exact information on. I can tell you the smaller counties, when they're first starting up, for the most part, they don't have a website. They don't have systems in place for taking these memberships. And what they do, and I'll answer this as a point of information, what they do is we give them a coupon code so that they can still go through our processor and get that first year's bounty. But that's a very wonky way to do it, and it's not really, you know, they're out recruiting. So we kind of take care of that, but we really don't. And I don't know the statistics, but I do know that most of the inflow of memberships, whether it be that they're at a county meeting or not, still go through our website. Is there further discussion? Okay, seeing none, debate will end. We will go to a vote on this motion. If everybody is clear on this would alleviate the bounty on dues sharing. So all dues, wherever it's originated from, will be split 50-50 from the beginning. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Motion passes. So we will go to the next. You were wrong, that was short.
Yeah, I know.
She said it was going to take more than 15 minutes. It didn't.
First of all, thanks for making me look like an idiot. What are you gonna do? All right, so now that we've gotten that long one out of the way, recommendation number 5. This one is simply titled Amendments of LPC Bylaws, Membership Conventions, and Their Purpose, etc. Because there is no possible other name we could come up with for this. This one is, if you've read over the proposals, it's very long. It takes up pages 16 through 54 of this 70-page document. It would return the Libertarian Party of California annual meeting, which is basically what this is, to a true convention of delegates as we've had in the past. This would also allow the county central committees more autonomy in determining how to run their organizations, and would create a better bottom-up organization going forward. In addition, it defines members as being all registered Libertarian voters in the state, which would give more incentive for voters, we believe, to register as Libertarians, and requires that registered Libertarians have a voice in who is elected to represent each county at our convention. Lastly, it requires all state central committee members to be registered. I'll restate that. Lastly, it requires all state central committee members to be registered to vote as Libertarians if eligible and willing. So this is a little different than what we talked about earlier today, where it was just if eligible, which provides yet another incentive to register as a Libertarian. This would also put us in conformance with California Election Code. This would the impact is that this would change the way membership works in the party and change how delegates are selected for the annual convention. And this, as I stated in the beginning, would impact numerous bylaws. And I will hand it back over to you.
Okay, this is now open for discussion. And again, if you've got a point of information, I don't care which line you're in, but right is in favor, left is opposed.
I have a question because I want to understand part of this, which is it sounds like each county party is going to be required to mail all of their registered voters for participation in a county election. And the challenge with that I see, if that's what this is doing, and some of this is confusing to me, the challenge here is that we have 200,000 registered Libertarians in the state, and you figure, yeah, if you spend at least 50 cents for a piece of mail, you're going to find that you're committing the county parties to spending an extra $100,000 per year just to mail to the registered voters.
I have an answer to the question of the question. In our bylaws, at the very beginning under definitions, anything that requires notice can be done electronically. Therefore, this can be done via email.
But you don't have email addresses for all registered voters, so you can't provide notice. So that's the problem here. The problem is that it looks like to me that you're committing us to $100,000 a year plus from our county parks. I mean, LA County alone has 40,000 registered voters. They'd have to spend about 20 grand. And I'm just looking at the postage costs.
If they did that to every registered voter that didn't have an email address.
There aren't that many email addresses that are valid in the system, and
Yes.
yeah, it's a lot of money you're asking from the counties.
Well, I mean, but that was, you said, does that require U.S. mail? Not necessarily, but I get, okay, yes, sir.
So, Joe Dean, Santa Clara County. I'm not arguing for or against that, so 2 questions. One does relate to that mailing to the registered libertarians. I'm not sure I understand the intention here. It seems to me that the proposed new bylaw 9 says that the county central committees shall elect their state central committee members, which is essentially delegates to the convention, according to their own bylaws, and that may include having the registered libertarians, who are now called members, participate either by the primary or by a convention or by whatever. Okay, so it's not required. That's my question is, are county central committees required to let all the registered libertarians in their county participate? If so, that seems to not be what it's saying. If not, then why does this other section say that we have to mail to all those people if they're not going to be able to vote in it? So that's a question. Can the bylaws committee chair explain the intention there?
No, because I don't entirely understand.
What?
I don't entirely understand myself, to be completely honest.
So you don't know whether or not county have the option of not including?
It would be up to the county. It would be up to the county.
So,
It would be up to the county.
Can you use the mic?
Sure.
yeah.
So there seems to be an inconsistency here, that one section is saying it's up to the county whether they do it with registered libertarians or not. The other section says we have to mail to all the registered libertarians. It doesn't make any sense if they're not going to be able to participate in the election. Can you answer the question? I have a different question that will take about 10 seconds.
So,
Whoever wrote this could answer it. All right, I have a simpler question then.
ask that one first.
Okay.
Yes? Yes, your simpler question?
The proposed new bylaw 5, section 1, numbered C8, says, being appointed by an elected member of the state executive committee. That appears to be an intended to replace a sentence that's being struck elsewhere, but the sentence that's being struck says that each state executive committee member can appoint one such person. This one does not seem to have any limit, and I'm wondering what that means. Can the state executive committee members just appoint any number of delegates they want without any restriction, or was that meant to say each one can do one?
What number is that?
In the new,
No. You said section 1. What's the specific? Section 1C, what's the number?
in the thing about how people can become.
8, okay.
Point eight in that section.
Okay, that is a bit unclear. I would agree with that. It should say,
So-
or by being appointed by an elected member of the state executive committee.
Right, it doesn't say that each one can do one.
It would need a
sounds like
sentence
any,
that
they can
probably
make
that
any
would
number
use
of
that.
delegates. It's like super delegates squared or something.
Okay. All right, yes?
Okay. To do this in 2 minutes. Let's see, so I think this is not ready for prime time yet. If we don't want to make this extensive of a change, there's a lot more work that's needed. I personally got confused between all the sustaining member and state committee member and the delegates, which were a different thing. And it's a lot. I think it makes it very messy. It definitely needs a proviso. There's some editorial changes that are needed.
we would be overriding some of the things we adopted earlier after we cleaned up the language, like this by law 4 section D. The ands and ors are really crossed up in there. It would be totally different from what we just adopted earlier about the standards to be a state member. So I wish to avoid spending hours trying to amend it and then it not passing, so I move to postpone indefinitely.
That requires a standing second. I need 14 people. Okay, we've got well more than 14. So all those in favor of postponing indefinitely, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, it's postponed indefinitely, which will not be during this convention, so it will maybe come back next convention. Next proposal.
All right, we are going to finish bylaws today. When's the last time that happened? All right.
And which proposal are we
Again, famous last words. All right, so moving on to recommendation number 6. This affects bylaw 22, nominations and endorsements of candidates for public office. So now that California has primary elections earlier in March, this does not allow the state executive committee to endorse candidates for the primary election in enough time to write an endorsement to have ready for the ballot. The impact of this would...
Everybody, we're getting complaints about too much noise in the back and people cannot hear. So if you've got chatting that you need to do, please take it outside.
Thank you. So the impact of this would be that this amendment would allow for the state party to hold 2 conventions, one to conduct party business and the other to endorse candidates in a timely manner.
Yeah, because I'm not at my computer when I'm...
Yes.
Point of information.
Yes, sir.
What is stopping the executive committee from acting earlier to
Nothing.
make nominations?
No, so the executive committee can do it at any time. This is saying that rather than giving that sole power to the executive committee when we're not having a meeting of actual members for our membership, that it would then be the members. So this would be, so yes, there's nothing that stops the...
Okay, let me rephrase that. What's stopping us from having a convention at an earlier date, or alternately you could say a later date?
Our bylaws don't have that. We only have one convention. We have no way, gosh, that got loud all of a sudden. We have no way to, call a special meeting in our bylaws.
I mean, if, for example, we had the conventions in the fall instead of in the spring, would that address the problem?
Well, that would change when our convention is, but
True.
Your first question was why can't, can the executive committee do it? Yes, they can. Right now, we do it now. They change.
That was not actually what I wanted to ask. You make a good point with
right.
regard to that. I agree that it should be the convention delegates
right.
making these endorsements if possible, which I think it is. But
and I think the answer to this is if possible, we do hold our convention at that time. But if not possible, this would give us the ability to have a separate meeting just for endorsements of candidates.
Well, the way I read it, it would require us to do so. It says shall, not may.
15 seconds.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry?
I don't think the time limits apply to the question.
Yeah, typically not, but...
I mean, I'm just saying there may be circumstances where we don't need to have that second convention, but this would require
Okay,
it.
so this says nomination for statewide office shall be made at a statewide nominating convention. If that happens to coincide with our annual convention, then it would be the one, but if it doesn't, then it wouldn't be, is my answer to that. It doesn't say we shall have 2, it says that we will have a nominating convention, which could either be at the same time as our convention or at another time. But that shall just means that we have to do it.
That addresses things.
You were not in line. Remember, points of information are not privileged, but
Right. So I'm speaking in favor. Brent Olson, Kings County. As we've seen, the state sometimes changes when they're going to be doing primary elections. And so this allows us, this gives us the opportunity to kind of strategically plan and figure out, set it up so that the delegates at convention, the members, can make those endorsements instead of relying on the executive committee to make those endorsements. Without this, if they change the dates or whatever, like you're just you're leaving it up to the executive committee, basically. So I think it's really important that we pass this. It doesn't mean we will have 2 conventions every year, but it would make it so that we can in situations where they move the primary around.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Point of information, would this preclude or would this include a Zoom online meeting as opposed to an in-person meeting?
We have no provisions in our bylaws for meetings of the membership to do it via electronic means. That would require a separate bylaws proposal. We have it for the executive committee, but not for anything to do with any meetings of the members.
David Bowers, Los Angeles County. I just wanted to speak in favor because of the answer that we provided to Star Child there regarding the shell, that it didn't have to be 2 meetings. So, but it does give the opportunity for that. So it seems like a minor little add. And that's the only line that's being added, correct? Is 1 cent?
It wasn't an amendment. I'm saying that it doesn't say we shall have 2. It says we shall have.
No, the actual, all I'm seeing, if I'm looking at the document right, there's just 1 blue line. There's not another paragraph. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
I guess maybe I'm looking at the wrong proposal. I'm looking at number 6, right?
Number 6, page 55.
I'm looking at it. So where is there the requirement or even a suggestion of a second convention? Show me that language, because I'm just not seeing.
Well, I'm going to just read what is being amended. So the only line that's being added is endorsements of candidates for any elected public office shall be made at the time of the statewide nominating convention. So we're adding that line to say that it would be made at a statewide nominating convention, which means that either it could be made at our annual convention, or if it doesn't line up, we could call for a nominating convention. It just says it shall be made at a nominating convention. That's the way I read it. So that would be my answer.
So does this mean that since something that's more specific is overrides something that's more general, does this mean that the only way that somebody can get an endorsement now is through a convention, that this will make it now impossible or improper for the executive? At least that's the way I'm reading. Whenever you come up with a specific instruction for how to do something, typically excludes any other options. So it seems to me that, and I don't know if it's intended or not, that you're going to eliminate the ability of the executive committee to do an endorsement because you specified here that the convention does that.
Yeah, so yeah, it would still be allowed by the executive committee because unless otherwise necessitated by the laws of the state of California or by decision of the executive committee, and we are not amending the executive committee portion of the bylaws, which is, I should know these things off the top of my head. Bylaw 12, executive committee already does give the executive committee the ability to do that. That would be otherwise necessitated by the law. So if there's a special election, for instance, and we're not going to call a nominating convention for every single special election, the executive committee could still do that, but for the regular, this is my reading of this, right? So somebody can correct me if they read it differently. This would be for our nominating conventions, which used to be something that we had in the bylaws a long time ago, and it just puts it back to that. So that's, the executive committee could still do that if it was required by state law. Okay, so real quick, let's go ahead to you.
So just to understand this then, the point is that primaries are now in March and our convention's in May, and we want to have another convention before the primary?
Well, the primary changes, right? So it's in March during the presidential years now. It's still in June during the non-presidential years. California could change it again, And it's
Well-
hard to account for what California is going to do.
I see nothing in the bylaws that specify the timing of the convention. I mean, I agree an earlier convention would be better regardless of the election year. It gives our candidates more time to get their operations going. The executive could just set the convention in February if they want to.
A convention in February wouldn't be in time for a March primary.
Why not?
Because you have to put your endorsements in before that. I mean, the endorsements need to be in before I'd have to look at the dates from the Secretary of State, but those have to be in before they print the ballots. And the ballots are printed long before the primary. So if you have a primary on March 3rd, I believe that the deadline for getting the actual state endorsements in was in December for a March primary.
Then, as Starchild said earlier, maybe it just makes more sense for us to be having our conventions in the fall instead of in the spring.
And that's something we could deal with, but that's not this proposal. If you don't like this proposal, vote it down. No, I understand, and I think that, but that's the reason. It's like you have to, for our endorsements, in order for them to be printed in the information from the counties and the Secretary of State, that information has to be given well in advance of the primary. So a March primary, we have to give that information to the Secretary of State in December of the year before. Yes, ma'am.
In regard to the issue of Zoom meetings, I think that's a deficiency. We've learned one thing from this pandemic is that we can do a lot of stuff online. So I would like to move an amendment which says, should a separate independent nominating convention be required, that it can be conducted electronically. Because the expense for people to get to 2 in-person conventions could be prohibited of getting people to the conventions.
Okay, so, yes, sir.
I think that's way beyond here. This is way beyond the schedule.
Well, let me consult, but I believe that it's specific to this amendment, which is only this nominating convention, not our... Okay, but I'm going to answer the question first. 5 minutes, what? Of the whole?
The whole discussion.
Okay, that's fine. So my ruling on that, or if you're asking for a ruling, is this is specific only to this nominating convention. So I believe that would be germane and in order if you'd like to make that amendment.
I so move.
Okay, so please, if the secretary could get the exact wording, so we are going to...
I can dictate if you're ready, Paul.
Okay.
This is going to be at the end of...
At the end, right. Should a second independent nominating convention be required in addition to the regular annual convention, that convention may be conducted electronically.
One more time.
How much did you get? Should a second independent nominating convention be required, that convention can be conducted electronically.
Okay, do I have a standing second for that amendment? Okay, plenty of people. We are now going to discussion on that amendment. Only you have the first 2 minutes.
I think it's pretty obvious. It's the expense I'm worried about, especially we're known as a bunch of old white guys with money, and making it more expensive to get to conventions is not going to help that situation. And I really would not like to see us exclude people from participating just because it becomes too expensive for them.
Thank you. Okay, somebody speaking in opposition? To this amendment only?
Hi, I'm Tom Nichols from Fresno, and I'd like to call all previous questions.
Okay, is there any objection to calling all previous questions? I hear...
I would not object to calling just the amendment.
I'm sorry?
I wouldn't object if it were just pending amendment, not all. If it were just the amendment for Ms. Jennings.
You're calling all previous questions or just the amendment?
All previous questions.
Okay, there's been objection. There is no debate. All those in favor of calling all previous questions, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. And the debate is ended. So we are going to vote on all previous questions. First, it will be on the amendment, and the amendment is to add the one sentence that calls for this to be allowed to be electronically for this meeting only, not our regular convention, but this meeting only. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, so the amendment has passed and we're going...
I'd like to move to extend debate again for another 10 minutes. The reason why is
That's
because...
out of order. We've already called all previous questions.
At some point, could you answer a question about how delegates are actually chosen for this new type of convention because it's not addressed?
They would be all members, just the same as our other one.
It doesn't say.
Give me one moment. Okay, so the only thing that this is amending in our bylaws is something that was already there, which was nominations for partisan public office. And it's adding, at this point, 2 sentences. This has always been in our bylaws, unless otherwise necessitated by laws of the state of California or decision of the executive committee. Nominations for partisan office shall be made by statewide nominating convention and by district caucus. Now, we haven't used district caucuses, but statewide nominating convention, I think, would imply, being that all of our conventions are actually annual meetings of membership, I think that that would imply that it would be all members. Am I reading that wrong, Mr. Brown?
If I followed you right, I think that's
Okay, so I think that that answers the question. The parliamentarian seems to agree with me. So we are now on a vote of the main motion as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's do a counted vote because that seemed about 50-50 to me, so it's really hard to tell. All those in favor, please stand up, and we're going to do a counted vote. And I'm going to start over here.
1,
2, 3,
4,
5,
6.
7, 8.
Back there in the 9.
11.
12.
Okay, starting up here. Star Child? Or, I'm sorry. 13.
14.
15.
16. 17. 18. 19.
20.
21, 22.
In the back over there?
23.
21.
Anybody else standing? There's a column in my way. Okay, and
26.
okay, 26. Please stand if you're in opposition. 7. Okay, we're going to start down here.
1,
2.
3, 4, 5, 6,
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, 23, 24, 25.
Starting up here. You're 26?
27.
Or-
So there was a 26 back there.
Okay, 27.
28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33,
34.
35, 36, 37, 38,
39. 40.
44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49,
49.
50, 51.
Okay. That failed 26 to 50. What was the last one? 51?
51.
That fails 26 to 51. We will go to the next item on the bylaws. It sounded really close. I think people changed their minds somewhere along the way.
It sounded like 50-50.
It sounded close to me.
All right, moving on to recommendation number 7. This is the first of 2 proposals we have that affect the 14th bylaw, the Judicial Committee. This amendment will clarify the role and responsibility of our judicial committee, as well as add alternates, which will remove the ability of the committee.
Point of order again. We just voted on not the main motion, correct?
We voted on the first part via voice count, and the amendment was via voice vote, and it passed. Then we had the main motion as amended, which we did a count.
Okay. There you go. I'll start from the beginning. Making me confused now, Dave. All right, this amendment clarifies the roles and responsibilities of our judicial committee and adds a couple of alternate seats. This removes the ability of the committee to replace. Will remove the ability of the committee to replace any vacancies and allow for a full 5-member committee in the case that one or more of those members, recuses themselves for a given appeal, or if there's a vacancy for whatever reason. In the past, we've had no requirement to issue a written ruling which explains the part of the governing documents not followed per bylaw 14, section 3. This ensures greater transparency, I think I can pronounce that one, of any actions made by the judicial committee, which would elevate issues that have come up in the recent past. It would also allow more time for the judicial committee to reach a decision and issue a written ruling, which should help in the deliberative process of the committee itself. So it's a lot of text for something that's actually more or less straightforward, we believe. The impact of this would be that it alters the makeup of the judicial committee and make changes to the ruling procedure.
Okay, we go to debate. Yes.
So there's one phrase that I really want to amend here. And full disclosure, I currently serve on the judicial committee, but in the final sentence, section 8, which was proposed to read, in the event the judicial committee fails to issue a written ruling within the time frame required, and in as much detail as necessary, the judicial committee shall be considered to have taken no action on the matter at hand. What does that mean? Who decides if it has sufficient detail or not? Because this says, in the event it doesn't have as much detail as necessary, then the JC didn't act. Well, what if they intended to act? Who decides whether it was enough detail? So I move to amend to strike and in as much detail as necessary, comma. Because that's highly subjective, and I don't want disputes about whether or not they acted.
Okay, so that's been moved. Is there a standing second on the amendment? You have to stand. Standing second means stand. Okay, we've got a second. This will go to debate only on the amendment.
Point of information?
Yes, sir.
The alternates, are they selected to serve by vote totals during the election, or is there some other mechanism?
No, it's by election. I believe, if you keep reading, there's another part of this which actually changes the convention rules to have.
Yeah, there is.
So if you look at the next part, what it does is, it's then at convention, it says they would be elected by the delegates at convention. Discussion on the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Yes?
David Bowers, disclaimer, Chair of the current Judicial Committee. I'm in agreement with that, because sometimes you want to make a brief statement. The Judicial Committee did have a brief statement to make on one of the matters, the thing that I had to deal with, so I'm in full agreement with that.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment only? Seeing none, we're going to go to a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay, it passes. Now we're back on discussion of the main motion as amended. Is there any discussion? Just hold it.
Okay, I'm holding up the whole stand here because it came loose somehow. I don't think that I mean, the problem I see here with the language isn't really so much with the change. It's the change isn't really making the Judicial Committee what it should be. It's further entrenching it as, I think, what it should not be, and that is a very narrow thing that only deals with violations of the bylaws. I think we really need some body of appeal that has a broader scope. I mean, if say the executive committee were to do something that was really egregious and anti-libertarian, but fell outside the scope of the bylaws and it negatively affected some party members and they wanted to appeal it, currently they don't really have any avenue of appeal. And this would further entrench that by specifically sort of making it more detailed in terms of limiting the Judicial Committee's role to only considering things that violate the governing documents of the party, but not that violate more intrinsically libertarian things, our foundational principles. So I feel this is kind of, you know, it's not a bad proposal in and of itself, but it's just kind of, you know, further entrenching the fundamentally flawed, in my view, conception that we have of the Judicial Committee right now. We need a stronger Judicial Committee to act as a check and balance and avenue of appeal.
I don't believe this is changing.
Expanding the Judicial Committee.
This is simply expanding the Judicial Committee and requiring a written ruling. It doesn't change. It's always been that the Judicial
Right. No,
Committee...
I understand that. I don't think the change is bad in and of itself, except that it further entrenches the system that we have as far as the role of the Judicial Committee.
What you're talking about, though, actually isn't a part that we're amending. If you want to make an amendment, you could...
I don't have language, but if anyone
germane,
wants to take a stab at it...
No, that wouldn't be germane. That would be substantive, because that's not what we're amending. We're only amending the makeup and the fact that there's a written ruling. But was that time for the whole item, or just time for him speaking?
For the speaker.
Okay. So next.
I have a question. I'm trying to understand, and I want to answer to a question that may impact what I want to do. So one of the portions here says, instead of at least 2 Judicial Committee members shall vote to agree to a hearing, it's now requiring that a majority of the committee must agree to hold the hearing. And I guess I first want to understand why that was introduced as part of the change, and then I might want to make a motion to revert that back.
Are you talking about section 3?
You're talking about the fact that it would take 3 as opposed to 2 to...
That's right, because typically, you know, the Supreme Court doesn't require 5 people, for example, to agree to have a hearing. They require only 4. You typically don't want a majority of the body to say, let's have a hearing about this. You want something less than a majority. So I'm trying to understand first, why you're requiring a majority to have a hearing when the current rule is 2.
Our reasoning for that was basically that it would just be there would be more consent to the judicial process of it. I mean, you're right about the SCOTUS thing. We just felt that 2 people wasn't enough to justify it, especially if we're expanding it to a 7-member committee.
Okay, so I would like to...
Well, it's 5 plus the 2 alternates.
No, 2 alternates can't vote.
Correct.
So I'm going to make a motion to strike that change so that it will remain at least 2 Judicial Committee members shall by vote agree to hold a hearing. I guess I need a second for that.
You do. I need, this is an amendment. It needs a standing second.
And then I'd like to speak to it.
Okay, first we need the standing second, then you'll get 2 minutes to speak to it if we have a standing second. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, I counted 13, but I was counting you. But I guess it's fine.
Okay, so typically the purpose of the hearing is to come to a decision, not to have the majority decide at the beginning that decision is to be made. Simply having 2 people instead of a majority just makes more sense. It just doesn't make sense that you need to get a consensus or a majority to even have a hearing. The hearing is for the purpose of figuring out, is a remedy required? You can't come in with a majority already saying, we know what the remedy is and that there has to be a hearing. You need to have it so that's something less than a majority. So keep it at 2, please.
Okay, this is now discussion only on the amendment. Do you guys have discussion on the amendment only?
David Bowers, Chair of the Judicial Committee, currently an LA County member. I'm in full agreement with the amendment. I would hate to be the chair and have to be in charge of a group where we weren't listening to just two people considering a hearing. So we did have an instance like that this year where we didn't even have one person, I believe, interested in hearing a matter. So I think we really need to keep it at two, because three, as Aaron said, it could look like it's prejudged, and that's not good. That's not good at all for the body.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody speaking on the amendment only? Yes?
Chuck Ham, Ventura County. I'm also on the Judicial Committee, and just to add additional context in support of the motion, a lot of times, at least the matters that have been brought for this past Judicial Committee term have been people's memberships, and I think you want to make it easier for people's memberships and potential exclusion from the party organization. We want to make it easier for them and not harder to get a hearing.
And I just want to, because you made that as a point, mention that for membership suspensions, it's not up to the Judicial Committee whether or not they hear the appeal. It's in the bylaws that if a member is suspended and they want to appeal, the JC shall hear that appeal. So, and I'll let him, because I answered that, I'll let him.
Except we also have these other we have the weird appeal where they were just appealing the procedure.
You're correct on that.
I mean, that still affected membership.
Yeah, but it wasn't an appeal specifically. So, what point taken? Yes?
5 minutes. Call all previous questions.
Well, you were just in time because we ran out of time anyways, so.
I said 5
we still were at 5. Give me the 2-minute warning, not the 5-minute warning, but, okay, but it was, you called all previous questions. Is there any objection to calling all questions?
Yes.
Okay, it's been objected to. We will go to a vote on ending debate. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, debate is ended. We will first vote on the amendment, which would change from, I'm sorry? Yeah, it reverts it back to 2. I was about to say that, but she was telling me something, which was what I was about to say. So, does everybody understand what they're voting on?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I was going to request that you read the amendment.
Okay.
Read the whole thing as amended.
Read the whole thing as amended? Okay, can you scroll back up, Secretary?
Sure.
The whole thing, or after we do this one amendment?
Yeah, this is just the amendment. You just need to know what the amendment was, correct?
The amendment's only what the whole proposal.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were now voting on the whole thing.
No. This is still just the amendment, which would revert it back to 2 Judicial Committee members as opposed to a majority of them, which would be 3. No, we just voted on whether to close debate. We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, my apologies.
Okay, now, we voted on that thing. Now we're going to do this other thing. Yes, sir. Is this a point of order?
Point of mistake on my part. I meant to remove the by vote portion as well, because obviously 2 people aren't going to have a vote. It's 2 people that gets to decide whether to hold a hearing. So it just doesn't make sense to have the by vote language. So it's my faux pas. I apologize for that.
Just wants to.
And actually, I believe that was the intent of your motion. It just wasn't made clear. So
It was my intent. I just didn't articulate it well.
yeah. So and I understood that as your intent. So that by vote is stricken in the amendment only. So it's say now at least 2 Judicial Committee members shall agree to hold a hearing to consider the appeal. Everybody understand what they're voting on? This is the amendment only. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Wow. Okay, so now we are voting on now we are voting on the main motion as amended. Now, would you like the whole thing read? Okay. All right, so
One moment.
okay, so I'll read the whole thing even though there's only a few amendments. So the Judicial Committee shall consist of 5 state central committee members elected at a convention of the party by the attending delegates. The term of a Judicial Committee member shall begin at the close of each convention held in even number years, an even number year, and at the close of the next convention held in an even number year. After a new committee has been selected, 2 alternates in ranked order shall be selected at a convention of the party by attending delegates to ensure a full committee in the case of vacancy or recusal. I'm not going to read what's stricken because I'm reading what's going to be. The Judicial Committee review of party action or inaction shall be limited to the consistency of the action or inaction in accordance with the governing documents of the party, including these bylaws and documents to which they refer, with the only exceptions being Judicial Committee duties mandated by these bylaws and arbitration of party contracts that explicitly call for arbitration by the Judicial Committee. At least 2 Judicial Committee members shall agree to hold a hearing to consider an appeal. The Judicial Committee may choose to hold hearings in person, by teleconference, or video conference. That's really it, except for the part where we then change the election to, excuse me, sorry. The Judicial Committee this is the important one. The Judicial Committee shall provide a written ruling within 7 days of the conclusion of the hearing unless otherwise specified. That ruling shall state either that no action is necessary or shall state specifically what violation of the governing documents justifies the action or remedy sought by the appellants. In the event that the Judicial Committee fails to issue a written ruling within the time frame required, the Judicial Committee shall be considered to have taken no action on the matter at hand. Scroll. And I believe that that's, now the next part is just, you need this part, this is just the election part. Do you need that written, read? Or are we good?
They've added Judicial Committee alternates.
Right, so because of the above, the only thing that changes is at the convention we will hold not only the election for the Judicial Committee but also the alternates. Does anybody?
We're at time.
I just had a point of information.
Yes.
Does that mean that there will be added an election for alternates should this pass at the end of with the elections?
Yes, that would take place. There's no provision that this happens after the convention. So at this convention tomorrow, we would be electing the 2 alternates.
Time has passed.
Okay, now we are at the full 15 minutes, correct?
Yes.
And we also have called all, we ended debate. We're at a vote.
I just want to get clarity on something just so I understand. In the Section 8 part, where it says that ruling shall state either that no action is necessary or shall state specific what violation or the governing documents justifies the action or remedy sought by the appellants, in the event that the Judicial Committee fails to issue a written ruling within the time frame required, and inasmuch the Judicial Committee shall be considered to have taken no action on the matter at hand. How does it work when you've got, let's say, somebody's being suspended, they go for an appeal, the Judicial Committee doesn't actually do anything? Does that mean that they just haven't considered it, but they're still required to consider it, right?
If they take no action, then they've taken no action, which I would, and I'll answer that, although this is discussion, I believe. I don't believe that this is appropriate because we've already called the questions, but I will answer that I believe that if they take no action at all, that means that basically they are not finding in favor of the appellant. That would be what it is. So, but there would have to be a hearing because they have to do the written thing after the hearing.
This is the results.
This is the result. There's already the hearing. The hearing's happened. Okay. Does everybody understand what they're voting on? Yes. Okay. All those in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, the motion passes. Next.
moving on to recommendation 8. We good? Okay. Recommendation 8, this affects bylaw 24, national convention delegates. So, as we are all painfully aware of last year, the use of an online convention for nomination of the LP's candidates presented a new and interesting challenge for delegation chairs. In the past, it was easy to see, so like in a situation like this, for example, it's easy to see who's present and voting. Doing so remotely made it very difficult to know who was still actively participating in the voting process and who was not at the computer or decided to go out golfing, for example. Having a connect, or their internet goes out or whatnot. So this created confusion and frustration with the delegates and the alternates who were waiting to be seated, because they don't know the explanations for the absences, and they were stuck kind of just watching 3 days worth of convention business, never knowing if they were going to be seated or not at any moment. This proposal would dictate at which point the delegation chair can pull the trigger as to what defines a person as absent from a quote-unquote room that they cannot visually examine. So this simply puts into our bylaws and clarifies given criteria for replacing delegates with alternates during national conventions should an online convention ever happen again. Fingers crossed.
Okay, we'll go to discussion on this.
All right, so in Roberts, there's a distinction between an absence and a vacancy. And what we've written here is that basically, if someone misses 2 consecutive votes, and this can happen within a few minutes apart of each other, someone's going out to the bathroom, they basically effectively resigned their seat and they're not able to be a delegate and they can't go back. So this is not really well written. I think that, I can see the argument for getting rid of alternates altogether, so we never have this issue of whether an alternate can be seated or not and only having delegates. But we don't have to actually select alternates. But I think this is poorly written. I think it's intended well. At the very least, you should change vacant to absent. And clearly, I think 2 votes, which can happen really in rapid succession, is just not workable. I mean, if you want to have something like if someone's gone for an hour or something like that, maybe. But 2 consecutive votes, that happens regularly. Just think about the votes that we've had in this room within minutes of each other. Do you really want somebody to go to the bathroom, miss 2 votes, come back and say, I'm sorry guys, but you vacated, you should have brought a pee bottle with you or something. You can't leave the room. So this is not workable.
So we actually did consider that very specific question while we were drafting this, which is why we wrote they shall be considered vacant, but we did not say that they shall be replaced by the chair. We said that they will be eligible to be replaced by the chair. So it would still be up to Mimi or whoever the delegation chair would be if he or she wanted to replace them, replace that seat.
It says they'll be vacant. They'll be considered vacant. Stop right there. The
That's
next
it, they're done,
portion
they can't come
is
back.
and eligible. Before that even happens, you've declared this vacant. This person is no longer a delegate. But maybe the chair doesn't replace that person, but that person's still no longer a delegate.
Okay, we can't argue back and forth.
Yes.
So I'll move to amend to change vacant to absent. Because if they're absent, the national bylaws kick in and allow you to do a substitute person, and when they come back, then they can resume their seat. But again, I don't want somebody to spend the money, go to convention, go to the bathroom, or go catch lunch with a local friend for too long, and they're no longer eligible to be a delegate because, as Aaron said, it says that shall be considered vacant. They don't come back after vacant.
So you're moving to amend, what is your amendment?
Yeah, he's got it.
Okay.
Strike vacant and insert absent.
Okay, we need a standing second. Are there 14 people? More than 14? Okay, now we're on discussion of only the amendment. Is there discussion on the amendment only? Discussion on the amendment only?
Renita Sussman, Los Angeles. I'd call all previous questions, please.
Is there objection to calling all previous questions? It's been objected to. All those in favor of calling all previous questions, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. I don't think that was 2/3. That was not 2/3. We're still in debate. I'm sorry. That wasn't 2/3. That was absolutely not 2/3. If you want to call for division, you can, but that was not 2/3. There was no further discussion on this amendment, so we're going to go to a vote on the amendment only. Yes, I know. All those in favor of the amendment only, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes. We're back on discussion of the main motion as amended. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'd like to speak against this amendment.
It's perfectly fine.
Okay, you're shaking your no, so okay.
No. You're there.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And you're, yes, Scott Lieberman.
Scott Lieberman, Santa Clara, yeah. I would just, as Mr. Starr mentioned, that you could, sorry, I think it was Ms. Masson, that you could have two votes literally 30 seconds apart, and I think this is just a little bit too severe a time period. So I agree with the sentiment of what they're trying to do, and maybe I would consider postponing it definitely, maybe and considering it tomorrow. Maybe somebody come up with language that's a little less severe, like maybe 20 minutes or something that you could keep track of easily, that would have the same effect as this amendment.
Okay. Did you move to postpone definitely, or did you not?
Okay.
You left that kind of ambiguous.
Postpone definitely. How about postpone definitely till first thing tomorrow morning?
You said definitely, not indefinitely.
Right,
correct?
I said definitely, yeah.
Okay, there's been a motion to postpone definitely until when tomorrow?
I said, okay, well, how about first item of business tomorrow morning?
Okay, motion to motion to postpone definitely to the first item of business tomorrow. Is there a standing second of the 14 people? Fails for lack of second. We are back on discussion of the main motion.
Starchild from San Francisco. My big problem with this is I think it puts too much power into the hands of a delegation chair. It doesn't say basically that they have to act any specific way, which leaves it totally up to their discretion. If they like the person, they don't have to take action when they miss 2 votes. But if they don't like the person, oh, your seat is vacant.
Any discussion in favor?
Wait,
are you in favor or opposed?
I'm sorry, Ken Molman with Riverside County officially. I was going to make a motion to amend to change shall to may.
Let's see, so your motion is to amend it to say from shall to may?
Yes.
Okay. May be considered. Okay. All right. Is there a standing second? Requires 13?
Requires 14.
14, sorry. Yeah, okay, we got 13, or 14, sorry.
So I believe I get to speak in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Anytime you have the word shall, it requires action. And in this scenario, there was concern about people getting up and going to the restroom during convention. You can easily miss 2 votes. We can have 2 votes back to back, call a question, then another call a question, and that's 2 votes, and you've missed them. Ideally, what would occur is if you need to take a break for whatever reason, you contact the delegation chair, you tell a delegation chair, I'll be right back, I need to use the restroom, I need to talk to somebody, whatever the reason, tell the chair, they know what's going on then, and then when they miss 2 votes, the chair can say, oh, that's because they went to the restroom, they'll be back in 5 minutes, not you've been now replaced as a delegate. So by changing it from shall to may, it provides that flexibility that the chair is not required to act.
Okay.
Hi, Mimi Robson, delegate from Los Angeles
And
County.
are you speaking in favor?
I am speaking in opposition.
Is there anybody in favor?
I thought he just, no, he's calling the question, so.
Oh, okay. Okay, go ahead.
So it may seem weird that I get up here. Right now, the delegation chair has all of these abilities. And that's what the delegation chair does, is swap people in and out. I think that certain parts of this are unclear to me because it's saying votes. It's not saying if these are voice or standing votes, polls, or if these are balloted votes. At convention in Orlando, in NOLA, there were people that left to go to have lunch. I see people in the room that left for a few hours to go to have lunch, or they'd go to the bar. We wouldn't want to say that when they come back after they've spent the money to go to NOLA or Orlando or someplace else, that they would have already, been gone. And as far as it being considered absent, the delegation chair already has that ability. And it's really not that hard. And I'm speaking at this point, because I've done it a couple times. I don't know that it's necessary. And so I just thought, being that I am a voting member of this body, not holding the gavel, I would speak on that. And I'm going to call the question.
All right, is there anyone opposed to calling the question? Yeah, there was an amendment.
I misspoke. I'm calling all previous questions.
Is there any opposition to calling all previous questions? Okay, hearing none, we are going to a vote on the amendment.
We already did the amendment.
No.
No, we did not.
Okay, we did not.
Oh, Ken Mullman made an amendment, that's right. I wasn't listening, I wasn't chairing, so I didn't have to listen. Okay, first we're going to a vote on the amendment only. Does everybody understand the amendment?
Repeat it, please.
It changes from shall to may. So instead of the seat of any delegate who has missed 2 consecutive votes shall, it says now may be considered. And instead of vacant, which already passed, it says absent. Everybody understand? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
The amendment has passed. It is now the main motion. The main motion as amended will add the section 3 with the 2 amendments. Does everybody understand? Okay, we're going to go to that vote. All those in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
The motion fails. Huh?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry that I messed up your thing there.
You didn't.
You look like the bad guy.
Which one?
You're on the right one.
All my pages keep getting changed.
It's judicial for any second half of judicial.
Is it number 2?
It's page 66.
All right, moving to recommendation 9. This is the second of the 2 Judicial Committee amendment proposals. There currently is no, this one's a little inside baseball. So there currently is no set format for the way the Judicial Committee hearings are held. And we believe that in the interest of fairness and due process to the parties who are having such matters affecting them that the JC is involved with, it's necessary to establish a format for these hearings instead of coming up with it during the meeting to ensure consistency in hearings and to allow for all parties and the Judicial Committee itself to better prepare for such hearings when they happen. It's easier to make an argument for or against your case if you know how the hearing is going to be held. This one is loosely based on the format that United States Supreme Court hearings are held. It streamlines the appeals process and ensures consistent and fair hearings for all parties involved. And as the reasoning already says, the parties will be better equipped to prepare for hearings should they arise.
Okay, we're going to go to debate. Yes, sir.
Request for information. Did the Bylaws Committee have any conversations with the JC about this before they came up with this proposal?
Not any specific conversations, no.
Okay, for the...
I will say, though, that a lot of, more than half of the Bylaws Committee was on the Executive Committee that was a part of most of these judicial hearings, so it was a problem that we had with it, too.
Okay, discussion?
Okay, I'm going to speak against this motion. I don't like locking in how long the judicial committee can allow argumentation. You know, here each side would be allowed, I assume there's a word missing, up to 1/2 hour. It says up 1/2 hour. I presume there's a TO missing. But anyway, each side would be allowed up to a 1/2 hour. Locks in additional rebuttals in section C or 5 minutes. And I think the JC has been pretty good about setting out fair hearing procedures without having to lock it in. There have been situations where I think things need to be discussed longer than these time frames. And in terms of content in section C, I think there's a vocabulary issue here. So in 10A, we have the appellant shall open. When we get to section C, following the argument of the appellee, the appellant shall be allowed an additional. Who's the appellee versus the appellant? Does one of these need to be a respondent? The first one, or this? Which is it? The first or the second? Anyway, so there's not clarity there about what word is which side, because that seems to be the second person, but then it's referring back to the same appellant that had the opening argument. So I'm confused about that, and I think there needs to be a vocabulary change. But in general, I oppose the limitations.
Okay, and you're not making any amendments for any vocabulary things, right?
Well, let's. Is there a word missing in the first part of B? Each side shall be allowed up to 1/2.
That should be up to.
Okay, so there's a 2
That's
there.
just a typo, so we can just put that in.
So I.
So you say
15.
shall be allowed up to 1/2 hour?
I don't know. I'll move to postpone indefinitely. I think the language is not ready yet, and I don't like the limitations on the time anyway.
Okay, so that's a motion to postpone indefinitely. Is there a standing second to postpone indefinitely? Okay, we've got more than 14. So we will go to a vote on postponement indefinitely. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, it has been postponed indefinitely. How many more do we have? And this is the last one.
All right. Last but not least, recommendation number 10. This also affects bylaw 5 regarding membership. So the current bylaws theoretically allow for repeated termination and reinstatement of membership, and we believe it is important to the integrity of the party and its institutions that membership remains clear of those acting in bad faith. This proposal not only eliminates a potential loophole, but also ensures that no procedural controversy shall arise should a member who has previously self-terminated their membership wish to rejoin, provides the means to do so and a possibility for the body itself here to reinstate or override that membership. So the amendment prescribes a means of reinstating a previously self-terminated membership and would, well, this is basically the same thing. Close the possibility of these loopholes and the abusing the benefits and powers that come with our membership for voting in situations such as these. And as I already said, it allows the body to decide also if a membership should be reinstated. So this would not just be up to the XCOM or whatever body.
Okay, is there discussion?
Point of information, what is this trying to fix?
People avoiding disciplinary action.
People resign just before the hearing.
Okay.
Perhaps repeated.
Who might that be?
Perhaps repeated.
Discussion?
I'll speak in favor of this amendment. In Los Angeles County, we are doing great and wonderful, and I love everyone. However, we have had a couple of people, maybe one individual in particular, who has previously resigned his membership and then rejoined at convention to terrorize us, and it's very unpleasant. And this amendment would prevent that from happening while also providing a reasonable amount of discretion so that people aren't, prejudiced against. So that's why I support it. It really helps LA County and other counties that are terrorized by people who don't have our best interests in mind.
Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to a vote on this. Does everybody understand this amendment?
Not completely. Can you just read it? Could I request that you read it in its entirety?
Okay, I will read it in its entirety. Okay, so this is adding a section to membership, which would be section 7. And so there's nothing that it's replacing, it's not amending something previously there. This is just a new section 7. Section 7A, any individual wishing to renew their membership having previously requested the termination of their membership through the means prescribed in section 4 shall do so in an associate non-voting member role and shall be eligible for full reinstatement as a central committee member following a period of 12 consecutive months. B, full central committee membership status may be reinstated at any time by a majority vote of the executive committee or by a majority vote of those central committee delegates present and voting at convention. C, this rule shall not apply to any membership terminated through section 5 or 6. Does everybody understand that?
I don't understand the reference to the other sections.
Okay, so, all right, okay, so what they're talking about here is section 5 and 6 are talking about suspension that is done by the executive committee. So what this is saying is that this doesn't change anything in the disciplinary process of sections 5 and 6, which are that the executive committee shall have the power to suspend county or state central committee memberships for failure, blah, blah, blah. And then section 6 is upon appeal by a county or state central committee member, the judicial committee shall hold a hearing concerning the suspension. So what this is saying is that this would not affect those things. So this would not affect those members that were suspended. This would only be specific to members that have voluntarily resigned their central committee membership through the means in section 4, notifying the secretary. They would not be able to then just rejoin on a whim to be able to vote at convention, for instance. And that was, I believe that's what she explained as the intent. So that is and we had actually, we were out of vote, but now I see people at the microphone. So what are the people at the microphone for? Because we were going to a vote and I was only clarifying what this was.
I was going to speak against, but if that's
We've already gone to a vote. Right now I'm just reading it to go to the vote. Is this a point of order?
I just want something really, really clear for me. In the bylaw 5, section 4 section where it's referenced, the secretary automatically shall terminate a state central committee membership if that member requests in writing such termination, or if, except for elected central committee members, that member fails to remit prescribed dues by that member's renewal date. I assume that what this new section 7 does, when it's referring to section 4, it's only referring to the first part. That's not referring to if somebody just happens to lapse in their dues, they can't come back, basically, without reinstatement by the, right?
That's a point well taken, and I do read it the same way, Mr. Starr. It's too late for an amendment.
One can certainly...
But one could try to make such an amendment.
One can make a motion to extend time by 15 minutes to deal with this.
Well, one could also make a motion to make an amendment that I could then decide was in order or not.
I haven't. If one had actually come up with the language in advance, yes, but I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here, so I don't have language yet. Perhaps it would be in order to postpone this until tomorrow morning so that someone can give you language?
How about this? What's your response?
It's because I...
Some people who have requested.
Okay.
We might have a solution.
We might have a solution, but first, what's your answer?
So my answer to that is that the amended section, or the Section 7 that we'd be adding is any individual wishing to renew their membership having previously requested a termination of their membership through the means. I do not believe that a lapse in dues is a request to terminate membership.
Correct.
I agree, and I changed what I said before. That is actually quite clear. And thank you. No, that is actually quite clear. When you first said it, I read it incorrectly as well. So it is quite clear. It's very specific to the person affirmatively requesting. So now we are back to that vote thing we were going to do. Does everybody understand what they're voting on?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the main motion, correct?
It's, I believe, the only motion. I think this is the whole enchilada. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes. And that is the conclusion of the Bylaws Committee report.
So,
Yes, sir.
Could I request from any delegate who voted in favor of the amendment that would require the judicial committee to submit a written report to speak with me for a few minutes, because I'd like to have it reconsidered, but I can't move to reconsider because I voted against it. This will only take a couple of minutes.
Okay.
I didn't vote at all on that matter.
No, you have to vote it in the other side. Not voting at all does not count. Okay, so you're doing this as a point of personal privilege, actually, to ask that. Fair enough.
Yeah, it's a point of privilege.
Yeah, so if somebody would like to talk to Mr. Weber about that, I think that that would be real swell.
So just to close out my report, since I did not expect that we would get to this point, I would like to say that we submitted the bylaws report ahead of schedule and on time. Thank you.
And I want to thank you guys, because we actually got through an entire Bylaws Committee report. We did it in like amazingly fast time. No, you can't. We did it real fast. And so the next item on the agenda is elections, which we are not going to do until tomorrow. Why? We won't get it done. We only have 50 or 49 minutes left.
Yeah, but you do office by office. You don't have to do all the elections at the same time. Also, it might be a good opportunity to test out Porcupine.
We're not ready for Porcupine, that's the problem.
He said?
Oh, are we? Does all of the delegates in this room know how to use Porcupine? Because, by the way, the reason why I was going to do this tomorrow is because we had trainings for Porcupine. During those trainings, we had precisely, well, no, I can tell you exactly 8 people out of the 130-something delegates that we have actually attend to the training. I'm going to let you speak in a second, but first I'm going to ask a question. How many people in this room know how to use Porcupine? How many people in this room have absolutely no clue how to use Porcupine?
You were here last year.
Wouldn't this be a good time to...
We could, and let me double check with Mr. Ferrer to see if this would be a good time to do so. We had talked about doing it tomorrow morning. Yes, but first.
This allows it to debug it if there's any problem. You can work
Got
it.
Okay, so, Ms. Janice, you're standing there. Do you have something to say?
Is there any reason we can't do the nomination part of elections and do the voting tomorrow?
We could do that, but what we were going to do before that was probably going to be the Porcupine training for y'all.
Yes. Oh.
So why don't we do that first? Because y'all didn't let me ever finish my sentences and shit, so. Mr. Ferrer, are we ready to do a Porcupine training? Okay, let me ask y'all this question, because this is what I was going to say a long time ago, but y'all didn't let me finish. It's really not an order of business of the day. Can I adjourn the meeting for the day with the expectation that everybody in this room stays for this training so we come in tomorrow morning and we know what we're doing?
That training would be to do the first one, which I believe...
Our first one is going to be a vote on pizza toppings.
No,
Well, why not make it be for chair since there's
Yes,
only one
pineapple.
candidate?
No anchovy.
Yeah. Okay, you know what? I'm going to leave this up to the body. Because,
I have a point of parliamentary inquiry.
yes, sir.
Those, and there will be some tomorrow, who do not want to use porcupine or who do not use it, they will still be allowed to vote
Yes, they
on
will.
paper ballot.
Yes, they will. Those that do not have devices and so forth, we do have ballots, we have, index cards. You'll still be able to do that, but we're hoping to, it's not going to be a conga line, for sure. So I'm going to ask you all this question. Mr. Dean would like to do our test vote be an actual vote. Do you guys want to do our test vote be an actual vote? Okay. I agree. I don't think that our test vote should be like an actual vote. I think that we should do ranked choice voting on pizza toppings, personally. Is everybody good with that?
As long as there's going to be results. Only in pineapple.
Yes, and there will be results on the pineapples today, or on the, not the pineapples,
Will there be pizza? That's important. Was there a vegetarian option and those for?
Oh, I wrote in kale, spinach, I wrote in all my vegetable options. Yes, sir.
Point of personal privilege. I would suggest, if we're going to have a sort of faux vote, instead of making it about pizza toppings, let's make it about something at least that's kind of meaningful to libertarians, like which government agency to abolish first.
You know what I'm going to do? Is I'm going to do a thing. Yes, sir. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I'd like to know if it's in order to propose that we continue the meeting as scheduled, and the reason for that is in previous years we haven't been able to get through the platform, and I want to make sure we have enough time for all of the things that are on the agenda for tomorrow.
Suspend the rules and go to platform right now.
You could do that. So we've got 45 minutes left for today. And the way that the agenda is written, and you could suspend the rules to do something differently. The way that the agenda is written is that the next item on the agenda is elections. I'm going to tell you a personal, it has nothing to do with me, but last year we got through platform sooner than we thought. And so we ended up having the elections not when candidates were prepared for the elections. And a lot of candidates were very upset that they weren't in the room to run for the offices they were running for, because we didn't do it at the time that we had anticipated doing it. Now, we don't have to. We could go straight to elections, and we could do that, and we could do that for the next 40 minutes, except for first we're going to have to do this training, or else it'll probably take us 40 forevers to do it because nobody will know what they're doing. So instead of using this time to talk about that, which you can make, I'm not going to tell you can't make that motion to call for orders of the day. You can do that. But I think that we'd probably like to do a test vote. So, did you want to?
Porcupine training it is, I guess.
I'm not trying to bully you here, I'm just saying. Yes. Okay, I'm going to answer that, but you're supposed to do it with the mic.
Would it be,
sorry, go on, sorry. As we noted, there is no requirement for you to use porcupine. You can still use a paper vote, a paper ballot vote.
Is there a requirement for the convention at least partly to use it, or should it go through training as part of our business session?
The training is not part of our business session, except for I think we probably want to know how to use it if we're going to use it. Okay, let's do this. Okay, I'm going to just take a straw poll here. How many people here want to use porcupine? How many people here don't want to use porcupine? Okay, we're using porcupine. You don't have to if you don't want to. No, Mr. Ogle,
I have a
I'm going to
question
call you
about-
out of order. Okay, I'm
Question.
probably going to call you out of order, but go ahead.
For the test vote, could we use porcupine or paper ballots or whatever? And the two choices would be, do you want to use ranked choice voting in single winner votes
No.
for executives, which is a one-party system, or do you want to use it as a multi-winner election or multi-caucus?
No, we're not going to. The test vote is a test vote that we're going to not be
not
doing during business, and the test vote is not going to be that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think I want to raise a point of order.
Yes, sir.
So my understanding, and maybe it's in the bylaws and I just missed it. We don't have anything in our bylaws that are, and I actually want to thank Star Child for bringing this up. I don't think he realized he brought it up, but he did. We don't have anything in our bylaws that authorizes electronic methods. I think we would actually need a bylaw to do that.
We also don't have anything in our bylaws that preclude.
I think you need to have a bylaw that actually authorizes it, otherwise it's not allowed. So maybe somebody can formulate a bylaw to allow this, but I don't think it's allowed otherwise.
Okay, I'm going to do a thing that you probably won't like. Okay, that was a point of order, correct? Mr. Starr? That was a point of order, correct? Okay, I'm going to rule on that point of order to say that it doesn't preclude us doing it. However, it's great, so you are more than welcome to appeal my ruling.
So I guess I'd like to hear from the parliamentarian on this, because it's my understanding that it's pretty clear in Roberts that it's just, you can't do this.
According to Robert's Rules of Order, it needs to be authorized in the bylaws, or it's not permitted.
So there's no real question here about it, so you really shouldn't have a ruling that says otherwise, if we know that there's no interpretation of rules.
But most parliamentarians agree there are some exceptions, such as impossibility of performance if we could not meet in person, but it's a question whether that exists here. That's a judgment call for the chair. It's the chair's decision.
The reason we were doing Porcupine was twofold. One was because it would probably be faster. The other is because of COVID restrictions and so forth. We thought the conga line was going to put people up close and personal doing the conga line. That was the reason that we did it. And this is why we've been expecting to do this for months, because we didn't know where we were going to be in rules and requirements for the pandemic. So, and that is the reason why we had chosen to do this.
We could still do training.
I have a point of inquiry that might move this discussion until later.
Yes?
I wondered if it was in order to, in the interest of efficiency, suspend the rules to move platform to now, so we can just deal with platform in the next 40 minutes or so, and move elections until after, so that we can utilize our time, be efficient, use the next hour, or whatever it is, 45 minutes, for that, and then we will do our elections tomorrow, and we can figure out the porcupine training, whatever. Is it in order for me to do that? And
okay, the way you would do that would be you would make a motion to suspend the rules to go next on the, this would be a motion to suspend the rules to amend the agenda to go now to platform.
Okay.
And you could do that. Now what that would mean is that we would come back in the morning and we would still be on platform.
Okay.
Just so you understand that.
Okay, I understand.
Is that the motion that you're making? And this is going to be you can make the motion one of two ways. You can make a motion to suspend the rules to amend the agenda to do this thing, or you could make a motion to suspend the rules to then do this other thing. So I'm taking it you want to do it as a one-part, one-vote motion?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right. So is there a second? And this motion, this would take a standing second. This motion is, by the way, not debatable. It is to suspend the rules to amend the agenda to go directly to now going to platform and putting elections after platform.
Yes.
How many, is there a second? I need 14 people standing. Is everybody standing that wants to stand for a standing second?
Okay, I'm fine with deferring to the unpopularity of my motion.
Okay, that died for lack of second. And now we've been wasting some good time.
Are you saying that we have, in order to use Porcupine, you have to have training at some point?
Well, right now, there's been a point of order that got sidetracked by her. The point of order is that we can't even use Porcupine.
Well, maybe it would be easier to discuss that after we've got the training, and then, and
I think that would be swell, but, okay.
We could get a demo and a training now, and then we could vote on Mr. Starr's amendment after he's had a chance.
Well, it's not an amendment, it's a point of order.
Well, if it comes to the
So I'll tell you what, I'll rule on the point of order after we do training. Does that sound fair enough?
Yes.
Because I was ready to adjourn a while ago to do this training thing. And then we went into, so where are we at now? We're now at 3:24.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there objection to adjourning for the day?
Objection.
Okay, it's been objected to. This is to adjourn for the day, correct? Not for...
We'll still be here doing training after the...
This would be adjourning for the day for business to come back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to continue with orders of the day. Am I hearing that correctly?
But there might be training.
But there will still be training after we've adjourned for the day that y'all can stick around for, which I'd really, really recommend. But it's been objected to.
No, my objection wasn't to the training.
No, I understand what your objection was. But do you want a ruling on that now that we do that thing, or are we going to do this other thing where we train?
I think I made a point of order that you can't do voting in a method that's not authorized by the bylaws. I think that's a pretty clear thing to rule on. The second thing is, getting people to get trained, I think it's a good thing, because maybe we'll decide based on that we want to change the bylaws to allow precisely this.
Did you rule it that?
I think just rule that hopefully rule that I'm correct. And then let's go to adjourning, and that's good.
Someone moved to postpone that? You moved to postpone, like...
You can't move to postpone a rule of order, really. So,
Are we adjourning?
okay, give me a moment. Okay, I am going to say this. This is not a bylaws amendment. This is a rules amendment, because it's convention rules. Because the way we vote is actually outlined in our convention rules. It is not outlined in our bylaws. I am pretty gosh darn sure.
Adjourning, or are we going to platform?
We're not going to platform. That died for lack of second. Right now, we're in the middle of a point of order. Somebody did move to adjourn, but we're not doing that, so I'm going to do this other thing real quick to explain what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is say that Mr. Starr is correct that we do not have it explicit in our bylaws, nor do we have it explicit in our bylaws that we don't. We do have the way that we vote in our convention rules, and our convention rules quite often get suspended during convention, oftentimes by Mr. Starr on how we vote, because he always changes how we vote, the method of voting. I'm going to rule that this is not a bylaws violation. This is a convention rule thing that could be done with simply a motion to do it in a different way. Just like when we do approval voting instead of our bylaws, I think that this would be similar, because this is where we talk about how the ballot votes are handed to the secretary. That is my ruling on this. It's not a bylaws violation to do this. It is a convention rules thing that can be suspended. And the parliamentarian can disagree with me if he would like, but I just thought it through, and that's what I came up with.
It's your call. I tend to think that Mr. Starr is correct that it's not permitted, but the different parliamentarians may disagree, and it's your call.
My call is that this is a convention rule that can be suspended. So my call is that unless, when we get to it tomorrow to actually vote, somebody would have to make a motion to change the method of voting. But in the meanwhile, we're going to do training to figure out how to do it, in case we do it, and we'll regroup tomorrow to do the thing that we're going to do.
Yeah.
Unless there's something that would be an appeal or something to what I just said. So, I've answered that. There's been a motion to adjourn. There was objection to adjourning. We're going to go to a vote. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of adjourning until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to resume business with the provision that you guys hopefully will stick around for training. All those in favor of adjourning for business tonight, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Who was that? Okay, we're adjourned at 3:28.
Excuse me, did you
Real quick, before we start with the training, I just wanted to announce that, so everybody knows, anybody who's interested in, being involved in organizing their affiliates or helping out with their affiliates, anybody who's leaders within their affiliate parties, their county organizations, there is a roundtable discussion about that issue that's going to be upstairs on the 8th floor in the Mount Whitney room. That starts at 4 p.m. So anybody who's county leaders, I highly recommend getting up there and participating in that discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. And I'd like to add, I wouldn't want that to cut into the time that we're planning on spending for this training. This training is important. So I'm going to add 10 minutes after this training ends, which hopefully will be before 4 o'clock.
There's no points of order. We're adjourned. We're going to training.